I'm Jason Thompson, 34, founder of NeuroSync Technologies, and I've always had a complicated relationship with my older sister Rachel. Despite building a multi-million-dollar company from scratch, Rachel spent years dismissing my career as a cute hobby and predicting my inevitable failure. So when I discovered her husband Ethan was the perfect candidate for our executive team, I couldn't resist hiring him without telling her. The sweet taste of success became even sweeter. If you're enjoying family drama stories, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stick around to see how this workplace revenge unfolded. Growing up in suburban Boston, the dynamic between my sister Rachel and me was established early. Our parents, Mark and Linda Thompson, were loving but traditional people who worked stable jobs, Dad as an insurance adjuster and Mom as a high school administrator. From the beginning, Rachel was the golden child, 3 years my senior and seemingly perfect at everything she attempted. Rachel breezed through school with straight A's, captained the debate team, and seemed to collect academic awards like other kids collected baseball cards. My parents beamed with pride at every achievement, displaying her trophies prominently in our living room. "Your sister is going places," they'd say, often within my earshot. I was different. Not worse, just different. Where Rachel excelled at memorization and following rules, I questioned everything and thought outside conventional boundaries. My report cards featured comments like, "creative thinker," and "asks interesting questions," but my grades never matched Rachel's perfection. When I'd bring home a B+ in science with an excited, "Look! I designed this cool experiment myself," my mom would smile and say, "That's nice, Jason. Did you see Rachel's history essay won the state competition?" Even in elementary school, Rachel developed a habit of dismissing my ideas. When I was 9, I spent weeks designing an elaborate neighborhood newspaper. Rachel, 12 and worldly, glanced at my first edition and said, "That's cute, but nobody will read that. You spelled neighborhood wrong in the title." She was right about the spelling, but her dismissal crushed my enthusiasm. I abandoned the project the next day. By high school, our paths diverged further. Rachel joined every prestigious club and positioned herself for top colleges. I found my passion in computers and coding, spending hours learning programming languages and building basic applications. When I excitedly showed Rachel a simple game I'd coded, she barely looked up from her college application essays. "That's a waste of time, Jason. You should focus on activities that will actually get you somewhere." College only intensified our different trajectories. Rachel attended an Ivy League school for pre-law, while I chose a state university with a strong computer science program. During her first visit home, she referred to my school as the backup option in front of our extended family. I smiled through gritted teeth as relatives nodded knowingly. It was during my sophomore year of college that I attempted my first real entrepreneurial venture. My roommate Tyler and I developed a campus food delivery app before such services were commonplace. We worked night and day for months, launching the service to modest initial success. I was proud enough to mention it at the next family gathering. "We've got over 300 users already," I explained to my parents over Easter dinner. "We're actually making a small profit, and we're thinking about expanding to other campuses." Rachel laughed. "A little app that delivers dining hall food? That's not a business, Jason. That's a hobby. Wait until you have to deal with real-world regulations and taxes and employee benefits. We've actually registered as an LLC," I countered. "And we've consulted with a business advisor about—" "Oh please," Rachel interrupted. "Playing businessman doesn't make you one. Call me when you've passed the bar exam and have actual professional credentials." Our parents sat silently, neither defending me nor challenging Rachel. Their silence felt like agreement. 2 months later, when our little startup failed due to technical scaling issues, I didn't mention it to my family. Rachel would have been too delighted. These family gathering dynamics became predictable over the years. Every Thanksgiving, Christmas, and occasional birthday celebration followed the same script. Rachel would arrive with news of her latest academic or career achievement, making law review, securing a prestigious internship, or later, winning her first minor case as a junior associate. The family would spend the first hour celebrating her news. Then, inevitably, attention would reluctantly turn to me. "So, Jason, what are you up to these days?" my father would ask, in a tone that suggested he was preparing for disappointment. If I mentioned any business idea or technological concept I was exploring, Rachel would wait for me to finish before offering a calculated assessment of why it wouldn't work. "The market is saturated," or "that's already being done by Google," or my personal favorite, "Do you really think you have the experience to pull that off?" Our parents never recognized the pattern. If I reacted to Rachel's dismissals, they'd suggest I was being too sensitive. "Your sister is just trying to help you be realistic," my mother would say. "She deals with failed businesses in her legal work all the time." By my senior year of college, I'd learned to share as little as possible with my family about my aspirations. I kept my dreams close to my chest, protecting them from Rachel's inevitable dissection. But the pattern was established, and my resentment, though carefully concealed, grew deeper with each family gathering. After graduation, the real world hit hard. Despite my degree in computer science, the job market was competitive, and my lack of connections made landing my dream position difficult. I eventually accepted an entry-level position at Meridian Technologies, a mid-sized software company in Boston. The salary was modest, the work uninspiring, but it paid the bills and gave me valuable industry experience. Rachel, meanwhile, had secured a position at Preston and Winters, a prestigious law firm specializing in corporate law. At our parents' anniversary dinner, she detailed her important clients and casually mentioned her starting salary, nearly triple what I was making. When conversation turned to me, I simply said I was learning the industry at Meridian. "Entry-level tech support, right?" Rachel clarified unnecessarily. "Well, everyone has to start somewhere. Not all of us can hit the ground running." The condescension stung, but that evening had one silver lining. I met Grant Wilson, a senior developer at a company that often collaborated with Meridian. We struck up a conversation at the bar about emerging technologies, and for once, my ideas weren't dismissed. Grant actually listened, asked thoughtful questions, and built upon my concepts with his own insights. "You think differently," he told me. "That's valuable in our industry. Most people just follow established patterns." Over the next few months, Grant and I met regularly for coffee, discussing everything from coding frameworks to business models. He became the mentor I desperately needed, someone who validated my thinking instead of tearing it down. During one of these sessions, I shared an idea I'd been developing for adaptive learning software, technology that could personalize educational content based on individual learning patterns. "This has serious potential," Grant said after I'd outlined my concept. "There's a gap in the market for this approach. Have you considered turning this into a business?" With Grant's encouragement, I began working nights and weekends on developing a prototype. My apartment became a coding den, with whiteboards covering the walls and empty coffee cups littering my desk. I barely slept, juggling my day job with my growing obsession with this new venture. 6 months later, I had a functioning proof of concept and a comprehensive business plan. Grant introduced me to several potential investors, and to my shock, 2 of them expressed serious interest. When one offered seed funding of $250,000 for a 15% stake in the company, I knew it was time to make a decision. After 3 years at Meridian, I submitted my resignation and took the leap into entrepreneurship. My parents reacted with barely concealed alarm when I told them I'd quit my stable job to start a company. "Is that really wise, Jason?" my father asked. "You had benefits and security at Meridian." Rachel was less subtle. "So you're unemployed now," she stated flatly when I announced my news at a family dinner. "Bold move in this economy." "I'm not unemployed," I explained. "I'm the founder and CEO of NeuroSync Technologies. We just secured initial funding and anyone can print business cards with CEO on them." Rachel interrupted. That doesn't mean you're running a real company. Do you even have an office? We're working from a co-working space initially to keep overhead low, I explained, feeling my enthusiasm drain away. It's a common approach for startups. Rachel hummed doubtfully. Well, I hope you've saved enough to live on when the funding runs out. Ethan says most tech startups fail within the first year. Ethan, Rachel's husband of 2 years, worked in corporate finance at a large investment firm. He nodded in agreement, but at least had the courtesy to look uncomfortable about it. The statistics aren't encouraging, he added softly, but there are always exceptions. Despite their skepticism, I pressed forward. Grant joined as co-founder and CTO, bringing valuable experience and industry connections. We hired 2 talented developers from Grant's professional network, and a recent marketing graduate who showed exceptional promise. Our little team worked tirelessly in our corner of the co-working space, refining our product and pursuing potential clients. The early days were harder than I'd anticipated. Our first version had bugs we hadn't caught in testing. A potential major client backed out at the last minute. Our marketing strategy needed constant adjustment. Each night, I returned to my apartment exhausted, sometimes doubting whether Rachel had been right all along. But I kept these struggles to myself during family gatherings. I knew that any admission of difficulty would be seized upon as evidence of inevitable failure. Instead, I spoke vaguely about making progress and exploring opportunities, terms generic enough to avoid outright lies while concealing our very real challenges. Rachel saw through this vagueness. At Christmas that year, she presented me with a wrapped package. A little something to help with your business venture, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Inside was a copy of Business for Dummies, with sections on bankruptcy protection highlighted. The family laughed, including my parents, while I forced a smile and thanked her for her thoughtfulness. Later, as we helped with dishes, Rachel cornered me in the kitchen. Jason, I know you think I'm being harsh, but I'm trying to protect you, she said, lowering her voice. I've seen so many small businesses fail in my work. The owners lose everything, their savings, their homes, even their marriages. I appreciate the concern, I replied stiffly, but we're doing fine. Are you? Because Ethan analyzed your business model based on what you've shared, and he says the numbers don't add up. There's no shame in admitting you've made a mistake and going back to a proper job. I placed the last dish in the dishwasher with more force than necessary. I don't need career advice from Ethan. Or from you. Fine, she said, throwing up her hands. Waste your potential. But don't come asking for legal help when it all falls apart. It was around this challenging time that I met Kayla Richards at a local entrepreneur networking event. She was running her own graphic design business and understood the startup struggle better than anyone in my family ever could. We bonded over shared experiences, difficult clients, cash flow worries, and the emotional roller coaster of being your own boss. Kayla quickly became not just my girlfriend but my strongest supporter. She listened to my real concerns without judgment, celebrated small victories that my family would have dismissed, and provided honest feedback when needed. For the first time, I had someone in my corner who believed in me unconditionally. When Kayla attended her first Thompson family dinner, Rachel's dismissiveness extended to her as well. So you're a freelance designer? Rachel asked, emphasizing freelance, like it was a shameful condition. That must be unpredictable. I prefer to call it dynamic, Kayla responded with a smile. Every day brings new creative challenges. Later, Rachel cornered me alone. She seems nice, but a bit naive, she said. 2 entrepreneurs in one relationship is risky. Neither of you has stability. We have something better, I replied. Mutual respect. That night, I finally opened up to Kayla about the full extent of Rachel's behavior over the years. She's always been like this, I explained. Nothing I do is ever legitimate in her eyes. You need to stand up to her, Kayla advised. She keeps doing this because it works. She gets a reaction. My parents always take her side. I sighed. They think she's just being realistic and helpful. Then prove her wrong, Kayla said simply. Build something so successful she can't possibly dismiss it. Success is the best revenge. With Kayla's encouragement, I channeled my frustration into determination. Every dismissive comment from Rachel became fuel for late nights, extra calls to potential clients, and relentless product improvement. I would succeed not just for myself, but to finally silence the doubting voice of my sister that had followed me since childhood. 18 months after founding NeuroSync, we achieved our first major breakthrough. After countless pitches, product iterations, and sleepless nights, we secured a $2.5 million investment from Vertex Capital, a respected venture firm specializing in educational technology. The funding came with connections to potential clients and invaluable mentorship from experienced industry leaders. With this capital infusion, we moved from our cramped co-working corner to a real office in a renovated industrial building. We expanded our team to 15 people, including specialized developers, experienced salespeople, and a dedicated customer success manager. Our adaptive learning platform began gaining traction in the market, with several school districts signing pilot programs. The local tech media took notice. Tech Boston ran a feature on promising startups revolutionizing education, with NeuroSync prominently highlighted. The article included my photo and a quote about our mission to personalize learning for every student. I framed a copy for our office but didn't mention it to my family. They found out anyway. My mother called one evening, her voice unusually animated. "Jason! Your father's colleague showed him an article about your company. Why didn't you tell us you were in a magazine?" "It just happened," I said, downplaying it. "It's not a big deal." "Well, we're very proud. Rachel saw it too. She said it looks like you're doing better than expected." Better than expected. The faint praise was so typical that I almost laughed. Even faced with public validation of my success, Rachel couldn't offer genuine enthusiasm. At the next family gathering, a Memorial Day barbecue, I noticed a subtle shift in Rachel's approach. Gone were the outright dismissals of my business as a hobby. Instead, she employed more sophisticated tactics. "The educational technology sector is getting crowded," she mentioned casually as we stood by the grill. "One of my clients is considering acquiring a company similar to yours. They say the market is approaching saturation. We have a unique approach," I replied. "Our adaptive algorithm sets us apart." "For now," she nodded. "Technology advantages are temporary, though. Someone always builds a better version eventually." Later, when my parents asked about our recent contract with a large school district, Rachel jumped in before I could answer. "Educational budgets are so vulnerable to cuts," she sighed. "Hopefully the funding holds through the next election cycle." Every positive development I mentioned was met with a qualifier about market conditions, timing, luck, or potential future obstacles. She wasn't calling me a failure anymore, that was impossible to justify, but she was carefully planting seeds of doubt about the sustainability of my success. The most frustrating part was that some of her points weren't entirely wrong. They were real business concerns that any entrepreneur faces. But coming from Rachel, they weren't helpful cautions. They were hopes disguised as concerns, subtle wishes for my eventual downfall that would prove her right all along. Thanksgiving that year marked a turning point. NeuroSync had just closed our largest contract to date, a statewide implementation in Colorado worth over $1.2 million. We'd been featured in EdTech magazine and had grown to 28 employees. By any measure, we were succeeding. During dinner, my father asked about the company's progress, and I shared our recent achievements, including our revenue projections for the coming year. Rachel listened, sipping her wine. When I finished, she placed her glass down deliberately. "That all sounds very impressive, Jason. I'm just concerned about sustainability." "What do you mean?" my mother asked. "Well," Rachel continued, "Jason's company is still relatively small in the industry. The big educational publishers have noticed this market now, and they're developing competing products with their massive resources. Microsoft and Google are entering the space too. We're aware of the competitive landscape, I replied evenly. Our technology has patents pending, and our customer satisfaction scores are exceptional. Patents get challenged all the time, Rachel countered. And customer loyalty only lasts until a cheaper option comes along. I'm just worried that you're getting ahead of yourself. Remember Connected? They were the darling of educational technology 3 years ago, and they just filed for bankruptcy. We're nothing like Connected, I said, feeling my calm facade cracking. Their approach was fundamentally different. All I'm saying is that early success doesn't guarantee long-term viability. I'd hate to see you get overconfident. Something in me snapped. Years of diminishment, dismissal, and backhanded comments crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. What exactly would it take, Rachel? I asked, my voice quiet but intense. What would my company need to achieve for you to simply say congratulations without adding a warning or prediction of failure? The table fell silent. Rachel looked genuinely surprised by my directness. I'm just trying to help you stay grounded, she said. Someone needs to play devil's advocate. No, you're not playing devil's advocate, I responded. You're hoping I'll fail. You've been hoping that since I started this company, since I started anything, ever. You've never once been genuinely happy for my success. That's not true, Rachel protested, looking to our parents for support. Mom, Dad, tell him that's not true. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. I think everyone's getting a little heated. Let's change the subject. Classic, I muttered, standing up. I'm going to get some air. I stepped onto my parents' back porch, breathing in the cool November evening. A few minutes later, I heard the door open behind me. I expected Kayla, but it was my mother. Jason, she began hesitantly. Rachel means well. She's just naturally cautious. She's not cautious about her own achievements, Mom. Only mine. That's different. Law is an established profession. What you're doing is new or riskier. So that justifies years of her undermining me? Making me feel like nothing I do is good enough or real enough? My mother sighed. Rachel has always been intense. Competitive. That's just her personality. I don't think she means to hurt you. Intent doesn't matter if the effect is the same, I said. And you and Dad have always enabled it. You've never once told her to stop or stood up for me. We don't want to take sides between our children, she replied, sounding genuinely distressed. We love you both equally. Loving equally doesn't mean treating equally, Mom. You've let Rachel define me as the less successful child for so long that it's become family truth. My mother had no response to this. After a moment of uncomfortable silence, she patted my arm. Why don't you come back inside? The pie is ready. I returned to the table, but the damage was done. I left early that evening, with Kayla squeezing my hand supportively as we drove home. I had finally confronted the dynamic directly, but nothing had changed. My parents would continue minimizing Rachel's behavior. Rachel would continue finding new ways to diminish my accomplishments. And I would continue feeling like an outsider in my own family, no matter how successful I became. 3 months after the Thanksgiving confrontation, I attended TechEd, a major educational technology conference in Chicago. NeuroSync had progressed enough to warrant a small booth on the exhibition floor, and I was scheduled to participate in a panel discussion on personalized learning technologies. During a break between sessions, I was examining a competitor's display when I heard a familiar voice. Their user interface is clunky compared to yours. I turned to find Ethan, Rachel's husband, standing beside me. In our 6 years of being brothers-in-law, we'd never had a conversation without Rachel present, mediating and often dominating the interaction. Ethan, I said, genuinely surprised. What are you doing here? Representing Bradford Financial, he explained, referring to his employer. We're looking at investment opportunities in the educational technology sector. I didn't know NeuroSync would be here. Small booth, big ambitions, I joked awkwardly. The family tension made this unexpected meeting uncomfortable. I saw your panel is coming up, Ethan said. I was planning to attend anyway. Your company's been generating buzz. His comment lacked the typical Thompson family qualifier, no, despite the challenges. Or, for now at least, attached to the acknowledgement of success. It threw me off balance. Thanks, I replied. We're making progress. More than progress, from what I've heard, Ethan said. Your adaptive learning algorithm is considered cutting edge. Some of our analysts have flagged NeuroSync as a potential acquisition target for larger education companies. This was news to me. Really? No one's approached us. They will, Ethan nodded. Give it time. We grabbed coffee after my panel, which Ethan attended, asking a surprisingly insightful question about our data privacy protocols. As we talked, I discovered a side of Ethan I'd never been allowed to see during family gatherings. He was knowledgeable about technology trends, had thoughtful perspectives on business strategy, and seemed genuinely interested in NeuroSync's approach. Most surprisingly, he revealed his own professional frustrations. Bradford is stagnating, he confided. Same thinking, same processes for the past decade. I've proposed modernizing our analysis methods, incorporating more AI and predictive modeling, but the partners aren't interested. That sounds frustrating, I said, recognizing the familiar feeling of having ideas dismissed. Extremely, Ethan sighed. I've been considering a career change, honestly. I want to work somewhere that embraces innovation rather than fears it. As we continued talking, I realized that Ethan had skills that aligned perfectly with the position we were struggling to fill at NeuroSync, Director of Financial Strategy and Business Development. We needed someone who understood both finance and technology, who could help us make smart growth decisions and evaluate partnership opportunities. What exactly would your ideal next role look like? I asked casually. Ethan described a position that matched our opening with eerie precision, a blend of financial oversight, strategic planning, and business development. He wanted to work with emerging technologies and have input on company direction rather than just executing others' decisions. We parted ways with a promise to stay in touch, but my mind was already racing with possibilities. On the flight back to Boston, I couldn't stop thinking about Ethan's situation and our company's needs. The irony was delicious. Rachel's husband might be the perfect addition to the company she had mocked for years. Back at the office, I discussed the potential hire with Grant. Ethan Williams has exactly the background we've been looking for, I explained, trying to keep my personal feelings out of the professional assessment. MBA from Wharton, 8 years at Bradford Financial, experience with tech sector analysis. Isn't he your brother-in-law? Grant asked, raising an eyebrow. The husband of the sister who thinks we're playing business? I winced. I'd shared some of Rachel's comments with Grant over the years. Yes, but he's not like Rachel. He seems to genuinely respect what we're building. Hiring family is complicated, Grant warned. If it doesn't work out, it's not just a professional problem. I know, I acknowledged. But objectively, he's qualified. More than qualified. Grant considered this. Let's do some due diligence. Check his references discreetly, verify his accomplishments. If everything checks out, we can consider it purely on merit. Over the next week, I researched Ethan's professional background thoroughly. His LinkedIn recommendations were stellar. Former colleagues praised his analytical skills and innovative thinking. He had led several successful initiatives at Bradford, including a technology investment fund that outperformed market averages by 12%. I spoke with our HR director about the potential complications of hiring a family member. She advised creating clear reporting structures. Ethan would report to Grant, not me, and documenting the hiring process meticulously to demonstrate that he was selected based on qualifications. At night, I discussed the moral implications with Kayla. Am I considering this for the right reasons? I asked her. Part of me wants to hire him because he's genuinely qualified. But another part enjoys the irony? Kayla finished my thought. That's understandable after how Rachel has treated you. But you can't make a hiring decision based on that. I wouldn't, I assured her. If he weren't qualified, I wouldn't consider it. But he is qualified, possibly the most qualified candidate we'll find. Then the question becomes, can you work with him professionally, separate from family dynamics? And have you considered how this might affect your relationship with Rachel? I hadn't given much thought to how Rachel would react. Our relationship was already strained to the breaking point. Would this make things worse? Or might it finally force her to acknowledge the legitimacy of my company? After careful consideration, I decided to reach out to Ethan professionally. I crafted an email outlining the position we were looking to fill, describing how his background seemed well suited to our needs, and asking if he might be interested in discussing the opportunity. I deliberately made no mention of Rachel or our family connection, keeping the communication strictly professional. Ethan's response came within hours. He was indeed interested and appreciated my thinking of him. He suggested meeting for coffee to discuss the position in more detail, adding a personal note. I haven't mentioned this to Rachel yet. I'd prefer to explore whether this is a good fit before bringing it up at home. His request for confidentiality simplified things for me. I didn't have to decide whether to tell Rachel. Ethan had made that decision for us. We arranged to meet the following week at a coffee shop downtown, far from both our offices and any family haunts. The hiring process began in earnest after our coffee meeting. Ethan impressed me even more in our detailed discussion of the role. He asked thoughtful questions about our business model, growth strategy, and company culture. He shared relevant experiences from his time at Bradford and offered preliminary ideas for improving our financial forecasting models. I want to be clear about something, Ethan said as our meeting concluded. If we move forward with this, I want to be evaluated on my merits alone. No special treatment because we're family. Absolutely, I agreed. In fact, you'll primarily report to Grant, not me, to maintain appropriate professional boundaries. We arranged for Ethan to come to our office the following week for a formal interview with our leadership team. I briefed Grant and the others about Ethan's qualifications but asked them to be particularly rigorous in their assessment, given the family connection. The team interview exceeded expectations. Our head of product development later told me that Ethan asked the most insightful questions about our technology roadmap that she'd heard from any financial candidate. Our lead engineer was impressed by Ethan's grasp of technical concepts unusual for someone with a finance background. Grant reported that Ethan's financial acumen was exceptional, particularly his understanding of educational market dynamics. He's the real deal, Grant concluded in our post-interview discussion. Family connection aside, he's the strongest candidate we've interviewed. I'd recommend making an offer. The rest of the team agreed unanimously. We crafted a competitive offer package, salary, equity options, benefits, and I presented it to Ethan over lunch the following day. The figure was actually higher than we'd initially budgeted for the position, reflecting the team's genuine enthusiasm for his potential contributions. Ethan reviewed the offer carefully. "This is very generous," he said. "But I want to make sure you're not inflating this because we're family." "The opposite, actually," I assured him. "We've been extra careful to evaluate you objectively. This offer reflects your market value and what we believe you can bring to NeuroSync." After taking a few days to consider, Ethan accepted our offer. He would give Bradford Financial 4 weeks' notice, allowing them time to transition his projects. He would join NeuroSync the following month. "I still haven't told Rachel," he admitted when he called to accept. "I'm waiting for the right moment. She's in the middle of a stressful case, and I want to present this as good news, not a complication. Take whatever time you need," I replied, secretly relieved at postponing the inevitable confrontation. "We're excited to have you join the team." During Ethan's notice period, we prepared for his arrival. I worked with our office manager to set up his workspace, a corner office with a view of the Boston skyline, befitting his director-level position. Our IT team configured his systems and access permissions. I developed a comprehensive onboarding plan, including meetings with key team members and deep dives into our current projects. I also prepared our staff for his arrival, addressing the family connection directly in a leadership team meeting. Ethan Williams will be joining us as Director of Financial Strategy, I announced. In the interest of transparency, he is also my brother-in-law. He was hired based solely on his qualifications, which you all had a chance to evaluate during the interview process. He'll be reporting directly to Grant to maintain appropriate professional boundaries. The team appreciated the candor, and several expressed excitement about working with Ethan based on their interview interactions. Our culture of transparency helped diffuse any potential concerns about nepotism before they could arise. Ethan's first day arrived, and to my knowledge, Rachel still didn't know about his career change. He arrived early, dressed sharply but noticeably more casually than his usual Bradford financial attire. I greeted him in the lobby and walked him through our open-concept office, introducing him to team members along the way. "Welcome to NeuroSync," I said as we reached his office. "Ready to revolutionize educational technology?" "More than ready," he replied with genuine enthusiasm. "This feels right, Jason. For the first time in years, I'm excited about work." Ethan's integration into the team was remarkably smooth. His financial expertise filled a critical gap in our leadership capabilities. Within weeks, he had developed an improved financial forecasting model that helped us make more informed decisions about resource allocation. He took the lead on evaluating potential partnership opportunities, applying rigorous analysis to identify the most promising collaborations. Most surprisingly, Ethan formed natural connections with team members across departments. He made efforts to understand the technical aspects of our product, spending time with engineers to grasp the fundamentals of our adaptive learning algorithms. He worked closely with our sales team to refine our pricing strategy. He even brought in homemade cookies for the office on Fridays, a small gesture that quickly endeared him to the staff. "Your brother-in-law is kind of amazing," our marketing director commented after Ethan helped her develop metrics for measuring campaign effectiveness. "Where has he been hiding these skills?" "At a company that didn't appreciate them," I replied, feeling a strange mix of professional satisfaction and personal vindication. Grant, who had been cautious about the family hire, became Ethan's biggest advocate. "He's transformed our financial operations," Grant told me during a leadership check-in. "His analysis of the California expansion opportunity saved us from a potential mistake and identified a much better entry point." As weeks passed, I grew increasingly comfortable with the professional relationship Ethan and I had established. We maintained appropriate boundaries at work, focusing on business matters and keeping family topics for the occasional lunch outside the office. During these private conversations, I learned that he still hadn't told Rachel about his new position. "I'm waiting for her big case to conclude," he explained during one such lunch. "She's been working 14-hour days. Adding this to her plate right now wouldn't be fair." "It's been almost 2 months, Ethan," I pointed out. "The longer you wait, the more it might seem like you were hiding it deliberately." "I know," he sighed. "She has a dinner with clients this Friday." After that, the weekend should be relatively calm. "I'll tell her then." I nodded, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety forming in my stomach. Rachel would not take this news well, regardless of timing. Her husband had left a prestigious financial firm to join the company she had dismissed as a hobby for years. The company run by the brother she had consistently undermined. No amount of careful presentation would make this palatable to her. "Just to prepare you," I said carefully, "she's likely to be upset. Not just with you, but with me. I know Rachel can be intense," Ethan acknowledged. "But this is my career, my decision. She'll respect that once she sees how happy I am here." I wasn't convinced, but I kept my doubts to myself. Ethan didn't fully understand the dynamics between Rachel and me. How could he? Rachel showed a different face to her husband than she did to her brother. "Whatever happens," I assured him, "your position here is secure. Family drama won't affect your professional standing at NeuroSync." "I appreciate that," Ethan replied. "But I'm hopeful this might actually improve things between you two. Once Rachel sees NeuroSync from the inside through me, she'll understand what you've built here." His optimism was touching but naive. Rachel's dismissal of my career wasn't based on lack of information. It was a pattern established long before NeuroSync existed. Still, I nodded encouragingly, not wanting to dampen his enthusiasm for the coming conversation. As we returned to the office, I couldn't help wondering how this revelation would affect the delicate family balance. I had hired Ethan for legitimate business reasons, but I couldn't deny the satisfaction I felt knowing that Rachel would soon have to acknowledge the legitimacy of my company. Her husband had voted with his career, choosing my vision over the conventional path she valued. Part of me felt guilty for this satisfaction. Another part felt it was long overdue. The revelation came sooner than expected. The monthly Thompson family dinner fell on the Thursday before Ethan planned to tell Rachel, and I assumed he would wait as planned. Kayla and I arrived at my parents' house prepared for the usual dynamic, Rachel dominating conversation, subtle digs at my business, parents maintaining the peace through avoidance. To my surprise, Ethan and Rachel were already there when we arrived, seated in the living room with drinks. Rachel looked more relaxed than I'd seen her in months, smiling as she described the successful conclusion of her difficult case. "The judge ruled completely in our favor," she was telling our parents. "The opposing counsel actually congratulated me afterward. Said he'd never seen that precedent applied so effectively." "That's wonderful, honey," my mother beamed. "We're so proud." My father nodded in agreement. "Always knew you had a brilliant legal mind." I suppressed the familiar twinge of comparison and greeted everyone warmly, Kayla following with her usual grace. As we settled in with drinks, Rachel turned to me. "So, Jason, how's the little software company doing?" she asked, her tone light but with the usual undertone of condescension. Before I could answer, Ethan placed his hand on Rachel's arm. "Actually," he said, his voice steady but clearly nervous, "I've been meaning to talk to you about that." Rachel looked at him quizzically. "About Jason's company? Why?" "Well," Ethan took a deep breath. "I've accepted a position there. As Director of Financial Strategy and Business Development." The room fell silent. Rachel's expression transformed from confusion to disbelief to something darker in the span of seconds. "You've what?" she finally managed. "I joined NeuroSync 2 months ago," Ethan continued, maintaining remarkable composure. "It's been an amazing opportunity. The company is doing incredible work in educational technology." Rachel turned to me, her eyes flashing. "You hired my husband? Without telling me?" "Ethan applied for a position he's exceptionally qualified for," I replied carefully. "The decision to tell you was his to make." 2 months? Rachel's voice rose sharply as she turned back to Ethan. "You've been working for my brother for 2 months without telling me?" "I was waiting for the right time," Ethan explained. "You were so busy with the Westbridge case, and I wanted to make sure this was the right fit before discussing it." "The right fit?" Rachel repeated incredulously. "You left Bradford Financial, a respected institution, for a startup that could collapse any day." My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Let's all stay calm. I can't believe this," Rachel continued, ignoring him. "Was this some kind of revenge, Jason? Some twisted way to get back at me?" "It wasn't about you at all, Rachel," I replied, working to keep my voice level. "Ethan has valuable skills that our company needs. He was hired on merit alone." "Merit?" she scoffed. "Or did you just want to steal something from me for once?" "Rachel!" Ethan looked genuinely shocked. "Jason didn't steal me. I made this decision. Bradford wasn't challenging me anymore. I wasn't growing there. So instead of discussing this with your wife, you went behind my back to work for my brother? The same brother who's been competing with me our entire lives." This warped perspective was so typical of Rachel that I couldn't contain my response. "Competing with you? When have I ever been allowed to compete with you? You've spent our entire lives making sure everyone knows you're more successful, more legitimate, more everything than me." "That's not true," Rachel protested. "It is true," I continued, years of frustration finally boiling over. From the neighborhood newspaper in elementary school to my college app to every business idea I've ever had, you've dismissed and belittled every single thing I've attempted. I was trying to protect you from failure. No, you were ensuring failure by undermining my confidence at every turn. Do you know how many ideas I abandoned because of your criticism? How many times I've hidden my struggles because I knew you'd take pleasure in them? That's absurd, Rachel insisted, though her eyes flickered with something that might have been recognition. Is it? I challenged. Let's review. When I launched NeuroSync, you gave me business for dummies with bankruptcy sections highlighted. When we secured major funding, you immediately predicted market saturation would doom us. When we signed our biggest contract, you warned about the instability of educational budgets. Those were legitimate concerns. They were hopes disguised as concerns, I corrected. You've been waiting for me to fail since day one, and it kills you that I haven't. And now your husband has validated my company by joining it, and you can't stand it. The room fell silent again. My parents looked stunned by my outburst. Kayla squeezed my hand supportively. Ethan sat frozen, eyes darting between his wife and me. Rachel stood abruptly. I won't sit here and be accused of sabotage by my own brother. Ethan, we're leaving. To everyone's surprise, Ethan didn't move. Rachel, we need to talk about this. Jason's making some valid points about patterns of behavior. Patterns of... Rachel sputtered. You're taking his side? I'm not taking sides, Ethan replied calmly. But I've watched how you talk about Jason's career for years, and there is a pattern. You never acknowledge his successes without adding a warning or criticism. Because someone needs to be realistic. His company operates in a volatile sector with massive competitors. And yet, Ethan countered, they've grown consistently for 3 years. They've secured major contracts and venture funding. Their technology is genuinely innovative. I've seen it from the inside now, Rachel. NeuroSync is the real deal. Rachel stared at her husband in disbelief, then grabbed her purse. I need some air. Don't follow me. She stormed out the front door, leaving an uncomfortable silence in her wake. My mother was the first to speak. Jason, did you really hire Ethan to get back at your sister? No. I sighed, the anger draining from me. I hired him because he's brilliant at financial strategy, understands our market, and has transformed our business operations in just 2 months. The fact that he's Rachel's husband was a complication, not a motivation. It's true, Ethan confirmed. The hiring process was completely professional. I was interviewed by the entire leadership team, not just Jason. I report to the CTO, not directly to Jason. Everything was done properly. My father rubbed his forehead. This is quite a situation you've created. Dad, I said firmly. This situation is a grown man making a career choice that makes him happy. The only problem is Rachel's reaction to it. You know how important her career is to her. My mother interjected. She's always defined herself by her professional success. And I haven't? I challenged. The difference is that Rachel's been allowed to celebrate her success, while I've had to defend mine against her constant criticism. My father sighed deeply. We never realized things were so strained between you two. Because you never wanted to see it. I replied, not unkindly. It was easier to believe we were just different than to acknowledge the pattern. The dinner that followed was awkward and subdued. Rachel didn't return, eventually texting Ethan that she had taken an Uber home. We ate mostly in silence, the weight of decades of family dynamics hanging over the table. As Kayla and I prepared to leave, Ethan pulled me aside. I'm sorry about how this played out, he said quietly. I should have told her sooner. The timing wouldn't have changed her reaction, I assured him. This was inevitable. I want you to know that this doesn't affect my commitment to NeuroSync, Ethan said firmly. I believe in what we're building. I won't let family drama interfere with that. I appreciate that, I replied. And I hope you know that your position is secure, regardless of what happens with Rachel. Ethan nodded gratefully. She'll come around. She just needs time to process. As we drove home, Kayla finally broke her diplomatic silence. That was intense. Understatement of the year. I sighed. I shouldn't have lost my temper. Maybe, Kayla replied thoughtfully. But everything you said needed to be said. That pattern has been poisoning your relationship with Rachel for years. Naming it was the first step toward changing it. If it can be changed. I mused. Rachel doesn't handle challenges to her worldview well. Give her time, Kayla advised. And in the meantime, keep running your successful company with your brilliant new director of financial strategy. I smiled despite the evening's tension. Whatever happened with Rachel, NeuroSync was thriving. For once, I had undeniable proof that my career choices were valid. Her own husband had voted with his professional future. It wasn't the validation I had sought from my family for years, but it was validation nonetheless. The next morning, Ethan called to give me an update. He had returned home to find Rachel already in bed, pretending to be asleep. The morning brought a frost silence as they prepared for work. As he was leaving, Rachel finally spoke. Did you take that job to hurt me? She asked, her voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. Of course not, Ethan had assured her. I took it because it's an exciting opportunity. Because the company is doing innovative work that challenges me. But why Jason's company? Of all places? Because it's a great company. Ethan told her simply. You've never given it a fair chance, Rachel. You've been so determined to see it fail that you've missed seeing what it's actually become. He reported that Rachel had been quiet for a long moment before asking, is he really good at this? Running a company? He's exceptional. Ethan had replied honestly. The team respects him. The culture he's built is collaborative and innovative. Investors are taking notice. You'd be proud if you allowed yourself to be. According to Ethan, Rachel had no response to this. She simply nodded and left for work. It wasn't resolution, but it was perhaps the beginning of recognition, the first crack in the wall of dismissal she had built around my career. The weeks following the family dinner revelation were tense but transformative. Rachel maintained radio silence with me, though Ethan reported that she was asking increasingly detailed questions about NeuroSync, how our technology worked, our growth metrics, our company culture. Her questions were still framed skeptically, but the mere fact that she was interested represented progress. Meanwhile, Ethan was proving himself invaluable at NeuroSync. His financial acumen combined with his growing understanding of educational technology created a powerful strategic perspective. Under his guidance, we refined our approach to contract negotiations, improved our pricing model, and developed a more sustainable growth strategy. His most significant contribution came through a partnership he helped architect with Meridian Learning, a major educational content provider. The collaboration integrated our adaptive learning technology with their extensive content library, dramatically expanding our market potential. The press coverage was substantial, with TechCrunch featuring NeuroSync as an EdTech innovator transforming personalized learning. 3 weeks after the family dinner confrontation, my phone displayed Rachel's name, the first direct contact since that night. I answered cautiously. Rachel. This is unexpected. Can we meet for coffee? She asked, her tone unreadable. Just the two of us. We arranged to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop equidistant from our respective offices. I arrived early, selecting a corner table that offered some privacy. Rachel arrived precisely on time, looking uncharacteristically uncertain as she approached. Thanks for meeting me, she said, settling across from me. Of course, I replied, waiting for her to establish the conversation's direction. After ordering, Rachel took a deep breath. I've been doing a lot of thinking since that dinner. And some research. And some soul-searching. I nodded but remained silent. Ethan has been talking about NeuroSync nonstop, she continued. At first it was irritating, but then I started really listening. I looked up your company. Read the press coverage. Reviewed your partnerships. She paused, seeming to struggle with her next words. I might have been wrong about your business, Jason. Coming from Rachel, this qualified admission was seismic. Might have been? I prompted gently. Fine, she sighed. I was wrong. What you've built is impressive. Legitimately impressive. The Meridian partnership alone is a major achievement. Thank you for saying that, I replied, genuinely appreciative of how difficult this was for her. It means a lot. I've also been thinking about what you said. About me undermining you throughout our lives. Her eyes dropped to her coffee cup. I didn't see it that way at the time, but looking back, there's a pattern I can't ignore. Where do you think it came from? I asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. Rachel considered this. Competition initially. You were always Mom and Dad's favorite. This assessment was so contrary to my experience that I laughed involuntarily. Are you serious? You were the golden child. The academic star? The one whose achievements were celebrated at every turn. Rachel looked genuinely surprised. That's not how I experienced it at all. You were the creative one, the charming one. Parents always relaxed the rules for you. They attended every science fair but missed half my debate competitions. I didn't know that, I admitted, realizing we had entirely different perceptions of our childhood. I always felt I was being measured against your achievements and coming up short. And I felt I had to be perfect because you got away with being imperfect, Rachel countered. It's like we grew up in different families. We sat with this revelation for a moment, both recalibrating long-held assumptions. When you started pursuing entrepreneurship, Rachel continued, it triggered something in me. Law is so structured, so hierarchical. Success comes through established channels. But you were making your own path, defining success on your terms. Part of me envied that freedom. You envied me? I couldn't hide my astonishment. All these years, I thought you looked down on my career choice. I did in a way, she acknowledged. Because it scared me. If you succeeded on your own terms, what did that say about my choices? About following the established path? It was easier to predict your failure than to question my own decisions. Her honesty was disarming. For the first time in our adult lives, we were having a genuine conversation without posturing or defensive walls. I never wanted to compete with you, Rachel, I said quietly. I just wanted your respect. I know that now, she replied. And you've earned it. Not because Ethan works for you, but because of what you've built. I'm sorry it took me so long to acknowledge that. It wasn't a complete resolution of decades of complicated dynamics, but it was a start, the first step toward a more authentic relationship. We spent the next hour talking more openly than we had in years, comparing perspectives on childhood memories and sharing professional challenges we'd previously kept hidden from each other. As we prepared to leave, Rachel hesitated. Would you be willing to give me a tour of NeuroSync sometime? I'd like to see what you've built firsthand. The request felt like an olive branch. I'd like that, I replied. How about next week? The follow-up family dinner a month later had a markedly different atmosphere. Rachel arrived with Ethan, greeting me with a genuine smile instead of her usual guarded expression. She had visited NeuroSync the previous week, spending 3 hours touring our offices, meeting the team, and viewing demonstrations of our technology. Her questions had been insightful rather than skeptical, and she'd seemed genuinely impressed by what she saw. As we settled around our parents' table, the usual dynamic was noticeably altered. When my father asked about work updates, Rachel didn't immediately dominate the conversation. Instead, she briefly mentioned her current case, then turned to me. Jason's company just closed a round of Series B funding. It was oversubscribed, they had to turn investors away. My parents looked surprised, both at the news and at Rachel being the one to share it. That's wonderful, Jason, my mother said. Tell us more about what that means for the company. As I explained our growth plans, Rachel listened attentively, occasionally adding relevant context from her legal perspective, not to undermine but to enhance the discussion. When I mentioned our challenges with a particular regulatory issue, she offered genuinely helpful insights rather than predictions of doom. Ethan caught my eye across the table, a small smile playing at his lips. The transformation wasn't just in Rachel's attitude toward my career, but in the entire family dynamic. My parents, taking cues from Rachel's new approach, engaged with my professional life with unprecedented interest and respect. Later, as we helped clear the table, my father pulled me aside. "I owe you an apology, Jason. I didn't realize how we'd been reinforcing an unhealthy dynamic between you and your sister all these years." "It's not entirely your fault, Dad," I replied. "We all played our parts." "Still," he insisted, "we should have recognized the pattern. We're proud of you, son. What you've built with NeuroSync is remarkable." His words, simple as they were, filled a void I hadn't realized still existed. The validation I'd sought for so long had finally arrived, and surprisingly it still mattered, though not as much as it once had. The true revelation came later that evening, as Kayla and I drove home. "You seem different," she observed. "More at peace." I considered this. "I think I am. For years I've been driven partly by the need to prove Rachel wrong, to show my family that my path was valid. But now that they finally see it, I realize something important." "What's that?" Kayla asked. "Their validation isn't what made NeuroSync successful. It was never about them. It was about building something meaningful, something that makes a difference for students. The irony is that by hiring Ethan to spite Rachel, I accidentally created the bridge that led to genuine reconciliation. Life's funny that way." Kayla smiled. "Sometimes the pettiest actions lead to the most profound growth." "I wouldn't call hiring an exceptionally qualified financial director petty," I protested with a laugh. "Your motivations had a touch of pettiness," she teased. "But the outcome transcended that. You, Rachel, Ethan, you've all grown through this experience." She was right. What had begun as a small act of revenge had evolved into something transformative. NeuroSync was thriving with Ethan's contributions. My relationship with Rachel had found new footing based on mutual respect rather than competition. And I had finally moved beyond seeking external validation to finding satisfaction in the inherent value of my work. The company I had built against my family's expectations had ultimately helped rebuild my family itself. It wasn't the outcome I'd anticipated when I hired my sister's husband, but it was infinitely more satisfying than the petty victory I'd initially imagined. Has a family member ever doubted your dreams or career choices? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed this journey of family reconciliation, subscribe for more real-life stories of overcoming obstacles, and share with someone who might need to hear that success is the best revenge, but forgiveness is even better. Thanks for watching, and remember that sometimes the path to healing begins with standing up for yourself.